Since 2001, Congressman Lynch has represented residents of the 9th Congressional District. This year he is being challenged by Republican Vernon Harrison and Democrat Mac D'Alessandro. Lynch and D'Alessandro will face off against each other in the September 14th primary, with the top vote-getter going on to the November 2nd final election. Both Congressman Lynch and Mac D'Alessandro are here today to talk with me about their candidacies. Stay tuned. And joining me now is Democratic candidate Mac D'Alessandro. Mac, thank you for being here. I have to ask you off the bat, what are some of the things that you would work on if you're elected to Congress representing the 9th Congressional District?
There's a couple things. First, we have got to figure out a way to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan. We're spending $13 billion a month in these conflicts with no end in sight. These are resources we desperately need here to help rebuild our communities. I also think that we've got to take on some of the worst corporate abuses that we're seeing, whether it's big oil or Wall Street. We've seen corporate excesses that have brought our economy to the brink and created environmental catastrophe in the Gulf. Somebody's got to take a stand and stand up to these big corporations.
As a freshman congressman, if you're elected, how do you think going in you'd be able to accomplish some of the goals that you've set out for yourself and for the district?
Well, I've spent my entire career working on behalf of working folks, both in legal services and in the labor movement. And I've taken on some of these big corporations. For instance, when Bank of America got $45 billion in taxpayer funds and then proceeded to lay off 35,000 tellers and other workers, we literally took a couple hundred people to their doorstep to tell them we thought that was wrong when they had a fleet of 9 corporate jets and were giving their executives huge bonuses. That's the kind of spirit, fighting spirit, I want to take to Congress on behalf of working folks.
And let's talk about your background. You were at SEIU, you're on leave. So how did you get to SEIU and then get to the decision to run for Congress?
I came to SEIU from legal services here in Boston. Because I saw in my work in legal services people transitioning from welfare to work, and saw though that people that are working hard often didn't have a voice on their jobs to fight for things like better wages and better benefits. So that's what brought me to the labor movement. I've been there for the last 9 years, but what I've noticed now, and a lot of people have asked this question, did SEIU or labor push you to get into this race? And I say no. Steve Lynch pushed me to get in this race by voting for the Iraq War and voting against health care reform.
And there seems to be out there like this swell of disgruntled voters, whether they're Republican, Democrats, or independents. Are you trying to capitalize on that? And do you think that the Democratic Party has moved away from what it was founded on and based upon years ago?
I mean, I was frustrated during the health care reform debate. I wanted to see more Democrats, including my own Congressman Lynch, standing up and fighting for what Democrats are supposed to fight for. The little guy, right? Working people. And standing up and really stating what our values are as Democrats. And that didn't happen enough. And I think we could have had a better bill had more Democrats stood up and fought for what it is we believe in.
In your opinion, what are those values that Democrats hold dear to them?
Well, always, if the choice is between working families and Wall Street banks, you always side with working families. If the choice is between communities and health insurers, you always stand with communities. Those choices are always very simple to me.
Because there's so much anger out there, and people look at where their tax dollars are going, and they're seeing what's happening in Washington, that they get confused at who's actually responsible. I think I hear a lot, and you probably hear this too, people are blaming President Obama for a lot of things that are going on, but in the previous 8 years when we had Bush, people were just kind of like, he's the president, he knows what he's doing, and he's keeping us safe. And it seems like all the anger is building up now. Do you feel like that's unfair, or how do you view that?
Well, I mean, all I can say is that I understand the anger and frustration out there. I think the situation in the Gulf Coast in particular, a lot of blame is being assigned to the Obama administration when the Deepwater Horizon well was permitted and established well before the president took office even. So, you know, what we've got to look at is the system in its entirety and say what conditions or what lack of regulation allowed a facility such as Deepwater Horizon to be permitted and built when it was a recipe for disaster almost from the outset.
Let's talk a little bit more about you as Mac, as the guy who grew up in Chicago and then came here to Massachusetts. Tell us your story.
Well, I did. I grew up in Chicago, and unlike both our governor and our president, I grew up on the north side of the city, so I consider myself to be very distinct from those two fine gentlemen. I've been in Massachusetts for 16 years. Came out here to go to law school in 1994, and have been in Milton for the last 7 years with my wife and 2 kids. We love it. We consider ourselves Massachusetts folks now.
Seems to be a wave of Chicagoans, is that how it?
Yeah. Yes, Chicagoans, very good, very good.
Coming to Massachusetts and running for office, are you friendly with the governor? Are you friendly with Councilor Presley in Boston? Do you know people from Chicago who are now here?
Yeah, in fact, I met Councilor Presley for the first time or what I thought was the first time at a book signing several months ago, and it turns out she went to high school with my little brother.
Oh, wow.
In Chicago. So the world has become very small out here. I didn't know the governor before, but obviously we are both from Chicago originally and came here for school, although he much earlier than I. And we've both decided to get into public service here in the places we live now.
If you're not successful in this race against Congressman Lynch, would you look to another office to run for?
No, this isn't something that I'd really planned on doing. I just, I was raised to believe that if you don't think something's working right, fix it. Get in there, do what it takes to solve a problem that you see. And that's why I'm running for this office. I don't have designs on any other office. But at the same time, if I am unsuccessful in this ultimately, I've got to decide what it is I'm going to do next.
And why should people vote for you?
Because I am somebody who's always going to stand on the side of families and consumers and our communities, and not health insurance companies and Wall Street banks and large corporations. Those choices are always very simple to me. People will try and make them more complicated than they are, but it's a simple equation for me.
Do you think it will be difficult if you're elected to go to Washington and then have special interests come knock on your door and say, hey, we want to put this through Congress, we need your help, please help us? And if it's something that you don't necessarily agree with, but you might get pressure from other congressmen or senators, how will you handle that?
Well, I think part of this job is being willing to stand up and stand with on your values and your convictions. And I'm running this campaign very much in the way that I would serve. I'm engaging voters and constituencies throughout this district, getting into every single community to hear what folks are concerned about. That's how I'm going to serve in Congress. I also have made a decision on my campaign not to accept corporate PAC money or lobbyist contributions because I don't want to be beholden to those interests.
And you'll continue that if you're elected?
Yes.
How are you reaching out to the voters? Are you door knocking? Are you promoting yourself other ways?
Yeah, there's tremendous enthusiasm out there. We had over 150 people involved in just gathering the signatures so we could get on the ballot. We have built on that. We've got hundreds of volunteers now involved. We are knocking on doors. We're making phone calls. We started to drop mail to voters in the district, and we're going to just continue to ramp that up as the weeks and months go on.
If people want to learn more about you, how do they do that?
We've got a website, www.macforcongress2010.com. That's MAC number 4 Congress2010.com.
You actually had an innovative way to announce your candidacy. In a way, you had a YouTube video, and I'm a Mac. How did that come about?
Well, I am in fact a Mac, so it was really, we just decided to riff. I guess there's this other Mac out there that's pretty popular, so we decided to, give them a little attention, and maybe, it was great because I'm running a campaign based on my values and convictions, and the folks that appeared in that ad are folks in this district that wanted to share what they're concerned about and say that they're standing with me because they share my values as a Democrat.